volunteer nonprofit, and we bring floating museums here. There's one on your dock right now called the Neo Santa Maria.
What is it called?
The Neo Santa Maria. It replicates the original Columbus ship, which sunk off Havana about 400 years ago. This is the last time you'll see this ship here for about 3 years. It's going to Lauderdale and then onto a ship back to Spain. So, I want to thank these folks for helping me here, including Rhonda from here. We're a non-profit and we promote marine science and cultural history. So since we founded in 2017, we've had 29,000 people visit the tall ships that we brought here. I was sick and tired of tall ships going to Savannah, sailing past us, and going to St. Augustine. So that's how we got started. So in 1562, Jean Royall found the St. Mary's River, and he called it the Seine after the river in France. Now, a very unusual thing happened when he came to the St. Mary's River. So normally they'd come into a river, lower their ships with their water kegs, sail up the river to fresh water at low tide, fill up their water kegs and take them back to the ship. That's what they did all over the world. So here, a strange thing happened. 2 weeks later, there was no algae in the water. 2 weeks later, people were not getting poisoned by toxins from the water. And that's because of the tannins in the water from the Okefenokee swamp. So what is a tannin? The red in your wine is a tannin. And when you look at a dry leaf, 50% of that is tannin. So tannin lowers the pH of water, kills the algae and the bacteria. So on these ships, they would eat salt pork. So salt pork strips the vitamin C from their body. So they're thirsty, so they drink more toxic water. So the word spread quickly throughout the ports around the world, come to St. Mary's, get the water out of that river, and it will last for months and months and months and still be fresh. So the tannin in the St. Mary's River comes down to our marshes with cordgrass. Cordgrass is a piece of cordgrass is a saltwater desalinization factory that turns salt water into fresh water. So the tannins in the cordgrass was a perfect place for shrimp and oysters to seed. And where you have, yes?
Are you wanting these to go through on their own?
Just not that fast.
I can work on fixing it.
Slow it down to about 15 seconds please.
Okay. But it'll take me a little bit. So
about the time he discovered this port here, about 1,000 tall ships a year were lost at sea in storm. Because you couldn't turn the nose of a sailing ship into the wind. So finding a safe port behind barrier islands here was a great place.
They're on 20 seconds.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Here's a rice boat here. And rice was a huge crop here. Actually, a rice paddy produces 2 crops. What's the second crop it produces? Anybody know? Crawfish. So if you grow rice, your second crop is crawfish. Crawfish, or you raise crawfish in your rice paddies. Here's your rice boats. Lumber is absolutely huge here. So when the live oak here made the ribs of tall ships, the pine made the decks, the white oak made the interior beams of tall ships, and the tall Georgia pines made the masts. So in 1838, there were more tall ships built here than any other port. It was a huge business. So St. Mary's was the most southern port in the U.S. for 41 years until the U.S. blocked Florida. At that point, the customs port moved St. Mary's to here. So every single tall ship coming out of the Pacific, South America, Central America had to clear customs here. So at one time there were 200 tall ships at a time out in this harbor. Hard to imagine, isn't it? So this gives you some idea of the size of these sailing ships. So look at the height of this man and look at the bow, how high that was, how massive these tall ships were. So in 1798, in the Patterson Boatyard in St. Mary's, they built the first USS St. Mary's. It was a 62-foot galley, lateen, coastal cutter. And it had a crew of 26 people, cannon up front. And then by the War of 1812, there was 7 of them out here. And 3 years later, the Patterson Young Boatyard built the 580-ton General Oglethorpe cargo ship. So the USS St. Mary's, this little tiny boat, was designed by J. Humphreys, the same architect who did the Constitution of Old Ironsides. Here's an old Spanish cannon that's now mounted in St. Mary's, but that Spanish cannon would have gone back to the 1600s. Now, if you can pause this for a second, this slide. Talk about what was the industry here. Here's indigo up here. Now indigo produced the blue dye. So indigo plants are about that tall, and they are harvested and put into water tubs and soaked to ferment. And then the pulp of the whole plant was beaten, stomped on, paddled, until it developed a slurry. And then the sediment would fall to the bottom of the tanks. They'd drain off the water, and they would dry the sediment and cut it into little cubes about this big. And that would go back to Europe to dye fabrics blue. Turpentine was very big here. Turpentine is very big here in Florida, North Florida, up to the 1920s. And they used to take a pine tree and they'd strip it about the length of this pole, about that wide, and then put it and dig it out in the middle and put one of these catcher cups here, and they would collect gum and they'd make turpentine with it. Few of you probably don't know that you use turpentine every day. You probably don't know that you eat turpentine on a regular basis. Turpentine's used in making perfume for spearmint gum. It's used for flavoring. So the food business uses turpentine. Almost every kid's food, cereal, is made from the flavors and even turpentine. Here's your rice paddy. Of course, everybody had to have salt, and so before there were salt mines here in the U.S., our local settlers either boiled seawater to make salt, or they had solar ovens. They would dehydrate salt water and make it salt. So they made their own salt here until big salt finds were found in St. Martin in the Caribbean. That's phosphate. Phosphate's found right here in Florida. So if you dig down 15 to 20 feet here, you're going to find a 15, 20 foot seam of phosphate. So phosphate so when a plant grows, it strips the earth of phosphate and it's replaced by phosphate and fertilizers. In about 1925, companies started putting phosphate in laundry soap to make laundry soap whiter. So you had a boom of phosphate business here. The Fernandina Phosphate Corporation ran from 1925 to 1955. So if you have a cell phone on you and you like your cell phone, you like phosphate, because you need phosphate to make steel. If you don't have steel, you don't have cell towers, you don't have bridges, you don't have railroad tracks. There's lots of things you don't have without phosphate, and by the way, coal. So when we bought Florida, when the U.S. bought Florida, when the president is speaking before Congress about why he's buying Florida, he says there's Spanish cattle roaming everywhere in Florida. You can't look any place and not see a Spanish cow. So that's a Spanish cow. So the cows got loose and they just thrived. thrive in Florida, to the point that today Florida is the second largest cattle producer in America. So this was labor intensive, so was that, so was that, so was that. That didn't come along until the 1870s. People started mining that. So when the people say that Carnegie's bought Cumberland Island because it was a nice place, nice retreat for them, that was nonsense. Carnegies were shipbuilders. They wanted to harvest live oak and trees off Cumberland Island to build ships with. Another rice boat. So Crandall's the waterfront of what we call Yulee. And of course, Yulee was named after a lawyer from about 1800. Here's a 413-pound sharks and legs looking at. Timber is absolutely massive. A massive business here. It still is a massive business here. So in Georgia, we're cutting down trees along 95 going north. So if a hurricane winds won't cover 95 with logs, keeping you people in Florida from evacuating. And someone said to me, "Oh, gee, it's just terrible. They were cutting down 100 feet of trees on both sides of 95. That's just awful." Well, Georgia produces 50% more new growth of timber than it harvests. And that includes getting 40% of our power from biomass from wood. So Georgia's not going to run out of trees anytime soon. Now, I'm the one that took your picture and guessed who designed this boat here. So the earliest pictures would be this date, the earliest photographs would be this date. And the US Navy started making steam and sail powered gunboats about 1819. This doesn't have steam. So this had to have been made pre-1819, and the design is consistent with his design ships. So this was a graving plate, newspaper graving plate I got from the Amelia Island Museum of History. And so in 1862, Admiral DuPont captured Brunswick, Georgia, and Fernandina, and blockaded Fernandina. This was his flagship here. He died in a year later from natural causes. Here's another print and another view of the city here. There's 4 and 5 mast tall ships here. taking lumber. Now this is a phosphate cargo ship here, owned by the Fernandina Phosphate Corporation. Now this picture here, I'm guessing, was taken from the pilot's tower. So where you had a harbor, you had a 200-foot tall staircase going up a tower, and someone would man that tower all the time, the top of that tower, and look for ships coming in. See a big ship coming in, the pilot would go out and meet the ship. So the ships would hoist a flag saying, "I need a pilot to bring me in." So here's a picture of Fernandina, and I've identified this ferry as the Hildegard from other photographs. That is a Trumpy luxury yacht. That's not anything to do with Donald Trump. That's the name of the yacht company. And I know these yachts very, very well because my late brother owned one. He owned the 1923 Trumpy yacht Freedom. So if you go online and Google Trumpy yacht Freedom, you'll be able to see that. His Trumpy yacht Freedom was built for the heirs to the Woolworth Foundation. So you can see these massive 5-mast ships. So you had ships, you had docks devoted just to salt. So King's Ferry is now where the Blue Bridge is on Route 17 crossing the St. Mary's River. The thing is that when you love history, it's like being a detective, because you get a picture and you look at it and you go, what does that mean? Where was that taken? Who took that picture? You know, what's it of? Here's the schooner Ruby of Skin. It was straight off quarantine station. So what does a quarantine station mean? It means yellow fever. So if passengers or crew of a ship caught yellow fever in some foreign port, that ship was put in quarantine here. Oh, and back up here. So, a second. Yeah. Here's Cradle again. So these passenger boats would go from here up the St. Mary's River, up to the Satilla River, up to Brunswick and back, constantly moving cargo, moving passengers. So this is just the other side of the bridge here. Here's logging. here's a picnic on the St. Mary's River. So before they dredged channels in the St. Mary's River, there were wide beaches on both sides of it. And once they dredged, the beaches went away. So if you've been to Mount Vernon in Virginia, George Washington's home, he used to ride to Alexandria, 10 miles away, on the beach alone. So his carriage would go up the beach and back. And then once those rivers were dredged, the beaches vanished. Here's the Hildegard that was in that other picture of the Fernandina dock. See the Christmas decorations going around the top and a Christmas tree? So in 2017, we brought the Nina and Pinta into St. Mary's, and we had 5,000 deck tours in 5 days.
Wow.
Here's a schooner Lynx. It's a replica of the fastest American ship in 1812. It was an American privateer, and nothing could catch it. It was finally kept caught at anchor, but it was never caught at sea. So when the British captured it, they took it back to England, took it completely apart, board by board, and copied it. And so, if you get a chance to go on the Lynx, it's down here frequently. Taking a cruise on, there's nothing as incredible as being on the Lynx with 14 sails up. It's absolutely breathtaking. Here's the Lions came in to see us. We brought the brand new at the time Santa Maria to Brunswick, its first trip to the U.S. And it took 10 years of study of historical research to get that as close as they possibly could to the original ship. And here's it at the city dock right now. And the rest of the time is for any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
What was any idea how deep the river was at Bramble for those ships to be up there?
Only a guess, and that's because the river changes constantly. It's constantly moving sandbars from here to here and back and forth. We know today that because the Cumberland Island Ferry has high-tech depth finder GPS that's 26 feet right at the end of the east dock in St. Mary's. It's been 8 years since the Corps of Engineers based here in this town has charted the river up there.
So you really don't have any idea what it is right now, the depth up there?
Now it's out of it. It's still very high. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Right. And there's still the public ramp. You kept mentioning King's Ferry. That is still public. And then you past that would be the White Oak Plantation area.
Right.
And that is of course public, but you'll see speedboats you wouldn't see the tall ships. And then we own on both sides, but by the Trader's Hill Campground and then the Devil's Elbow. And so that is out of its banks, and the Trader's Hill Campground, the boat ramp is underwater. I was just there Sunday, but there are still camping up because it's at much higher ground. And you can get to the river from our property, but the boat ramp is still underwater. And we were told that if the tall ships came as far as the Devil's Elbow,
Did they?
well, not the tall ships, they would come in and then they would drop their dory boats.
Right.
And go further in and fill their kegs of water because they could get back to England.
Sure.
And the property has stories of, we bought it from a conservation. And before that, it had been a tree farm. And the tree farm gives it to the conservation people as a tax write-off. Conservation people hold it for 5 years and they can sell it so they can buy more land to put in conservation. Right, something like that. We were told stories about Indians attacking a white woman at Fort Alert, and then but he really was very innocent. She was, according to the stories, and so they hung him there, and they cursed the land and Indian powwows and stuff like that. And there is a cemetery in the middle of the property.
Well, most roads we have today, or not many, not most, but many roads we have today were Indian trails or paths. For a reason. Indians found this was the best way to get there, and our pioneers just followed those same tracks. You had a question?
I was just curious, similar question. I wanted to know how much draw those tall ships had in the river. What was it? I mean, they look massive, both. So I'm just trying to figure out along the same lines.
They are.
How deep the
They
river
are
is.
massive, and of course, that's like saying how big is a house? Well, whose house? When we bring in tall ships here, we need to know exactly what that draft is, and decide, is it going to Brunswick, is it going to here, is it going to St. Mary's? Where is the best place to put that? The draft on the Santa Maria is about 12 feet.
No, that's not much. That's not much. Okay.
Yes, sir.
A ship like the Ruby Skein could go all the way up to Orange Bluff and load there.
Right.
So the
And
lumber either came down to Fernandina and got loaded, or you take the ship up the river to Crandall or Kingsbury, Orange Bluff, and load them there.
well, they had a customer up there that liked exotic animals. And they would take that customer, lions, tigers, monkeys, all kinds of things. That the normal buyer wouldn't be looking for. You're correct. Yes, ma'am.
Can you board the Santa Maria?
You can. It's $15, $25 for a family, $5 for kids. It's a 5-deck tour. And you don't need
You've done it? Yeah,
reservations.
Okay.
Yes,
Spring.
go to the dock and buy a ticket. Wooden ships are immensely expensive to maintain. So if a wooden ship costs $10 million, it costs $1.5 million a year just to keep it in its current state.
How long will it be here?
Yes.
October 12th, I think.
12th.
Yeah. It sails.
And then it's going to stop taking tours and get ready for its last trip down to Lauderdale to East Lodonga. cargo ship. Now the foundation that owns that ship owns the Galliano and the Victoria. And and last year they bought a 1915 tall cargo ship, which they've just finished restoring. And so through the St. Mary's Tall Ship Alliance, they'll be rotating those 4 ships to us here. Yeah, which I don't think is going to please St. Augustine much. But, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I know that there's restoration that goes on in the Chesapeake Bay and also up in Maine. Where's the closest place where you restore a tall ship around here? Anywhere?
Well, if you were rebuilding the hull, you'd go to Iron City, Georgia, 15 miles from Alabama border, because they have a 100-year-old saw that will twist and cut live oak to the exact shape you need that beam to do.
And how are people learning how to do that? Do you have an apprenticeship program or anything to teach people about this? Because that knowledge will die.
Yes, and rebuilding tall ships, most of them, about, I would say, 90% of the people that rebuild tall ships are volunteers, and the money's for materials, logistics, storage, getting things there, design work. Last year, a Trumpy yacht, derelict Trumpy yacht, was bought here for I think $100, and it was taken to Darien, Georgia, and they are restoring that back to its full glory. And once they get that done, that'll be a $15 million yacht.
Do you ever have tours of the restoration sites so that people could watch them being?
There are online pictures of every step. So and I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube of the restoration of my brother's yacht, Freedom, showing every step of the restoration. They basically took the guts of the original yacht and set it in a brand new hull, with all the mod cons and AC and But there's quite a bit online. The St. Mary's Tall Ship Alliance website, smtsa.org, has a lot of things on there like that. It's a pretty content rich site, but it's amazing to there's only a couple of people that can cut the live oak ribs, because every rib is different. There's no 2 ribs, and they're cut at angles. So, and then the cleats on tall ships were made from ironwood from Central America. Very, very hard black wood, as strong as iron. So at one time, some idiot in the British Navy decided that he could go cheap and replace this iron wood with real iron. Well, that worked out real well until the first lightning storm.
Are there any more questions? We maybe have time for one more if anybody has one. No? Well, thank you, John.
Thank you so
It was
much.
great. see you at the 3rd on 3rd next Friday at 6 p.m.
Yeah.